starting our process for questions and answers. I'm going to explain the process for question and answers and not levitate while I'm doing it. There are 4 magisterial districts in Greene, each with its own member of the board. And then there is a 5th board member who is designated at large. All voters in Greene can vote for the at-large candidate. And you can vote for a candidate running in the district where you live, but not in any other districts. When you vote, your ballot will have only the candidate for at-large and for your district. There's also a space where you can write the name of a candidate for any of these positions. However, in the Monroe district, there's nobody's name on the ballot. So you can only vote by writing in a name. And I was going to say we have 3 candidates with us here tonight, but we don't. We have Todd Sansom. Where's Todd?
Right behind you.
Oh, you're behind me. That makes me nervous.
We fix that.
And Francis McGuigan. They are both running for at-large. So that means every one of you, if you're a registered voter, can vote for one or the other of them. Corey Jacober, who is not here, is running as a write-in candidate for the Monroe district, which consists of Swift Run and Dyke voting precincts. There is now a 2nd write-in candidate for Monroe. His name is Tim Goolsby. Tim had a previous commitment tonight and cannot be here, but he will be here October 20th and speak for 5 to 10 minutes before our main speaker that I just announced. I had a pleasant chat with him on the phone. Davis Lamb is the incumbent for Ruckersville. He is running unopposed. His wife is in ill health, and we send our best wishes and didn't expect him to attend tonight. Remember, even though you cannot vote for a supervisor outside of your district, once elected, that member will be making decisions for the entire county. So it's important for you to listen to all of them and figure out their positions. Okay, so if you 2 would come
Take a
forward.
seat. Okay.
And we have limited time, but now that Corey isn't here, we have more. You can sit or stand however you're comfortable. I will give you each.
Okay.
I'll give you each like 3 to 5 minutes to introduce yourselves, talk about why you're running, etc. And then I have questions prepared that I will ask, and then we will take questions from the audience.
My name is Todd Sansom. I think I know many of you in this room, but I want to thank you for having me. I live out towards the Dyke area of Greene County, live in the same house that I grew up in. K through 12 in Greene County Public Schools, and then I went to college at Belmont University in Nashville, Tennessee, where I studied voice. Parlayed that into a music career in Nashville for 15 years before I moved back here in 2015 to raise my family. Since moving back, you might know that I built the Maybells Market out in Dyke, and then more recently Maybells on Main right here in Stanardsville. Maybells Market is about 3 years old now, and Main is just over a year.
And I think they have excellent food.
Thank you very much. I also have served on the school board. I'm finishing up my 4th year on the school board. My friend Roddy Kibler called me 4 years ago and asked if I would consider filling the seat that he was stepping aside from. That has been a learning experience. It has certainly been quite a 4 years to serve on the school board. No matter what you were expecting, this wasn't it. And I think we can take a lot of pride as a school division in how we have gotten our schools through this time. Placing the children first, remaining as open as the state laws allow, and certainly being there in a recovery mode, as they have a lot of needs beyond just the academics now. The world of education has changed, and our world has changed, right, so much in the last 3 years, that it has required our teachers and our staff to do things differently than we've ever done before. We're doing a lot in the schools to bring in, whether it's new personnel such as success coaches, or whether it is just reconfiguring the learning process so that we're meeting these needs of these children who oftentimes are falling behind because of circumstances outside of the school buildings, right? Family circumstances and things like drug addiction and mental health issues. There's a lot of that at play, and it has all been accelerated in the last 3 years. So it has been a tumultuous time on the school board, and I've been able to work closely with our superintendent. I was listening to Susan talk about how you work with the county administrator and the role of the board versus county administrator and the rest of the staff. It's very much the same on the school board. The school superintendent is our one employee, and so we work closely with her and myself as chair the last 2 years, particularly closely. And then she executes the plan, right? The board has the vision, and she executes the plan. So as we look forward, I am running for the at-large seat with kind of 3 pillars, 3 priorities. The first, as we will, I'm sure, talk about this evening, you have the water issue that is facing Greene County. That's a very serious issue. We're behind on that, and pushing that reservoir project forward is a priority of mine. The second would be the situation regarding our volunteer fire staff, our volunteer fire departments. We are having trouble getting volunteers. We're having trouble getting certifications. It's getting harder and harder for those guys to keep doing what they do. But if we were to lose our volunteer staff and have to go to a paid fire staff, that would be a big financial imposition on the county. And we want to try and avoid that at all costs. So that's number 2. And then number 3, which I've already touched on, is our at-risk youth, our drug addiction, our mental health population, those concerns. That has not been something that's been in the purview of the Board of Supervisors in the past. I'm aware of that. But much like our schools where you've had teachers that maybe you're having to work less than they did before, I think it's going to require a whole of government approach. We need better coordination between the departments, Sheriff's Department, Social Services, schools, that right now are kind of operating in their own orbit a little bit, and I think we need better coordination and communication. So those are the 3 things that I like to focus on. Again, thank you for having me, and I'm excited to answer your questions.
Okay, Francis, your turn.
My name is Francis McGuigan. I know some of you. I am not from Greene County. I was a military brat. My father served for 26 years. My grandfather before him, I served for 20, and my son is now in the Marines. So 105 years of service. Lived in 17 places, 3 times in Virginia. And I went here undergrad, and I used to hitchhike between Falls Church, which you're not supposed to do, but all of you, you're young enough that I'm not setting a bad example, to UVA. And there's the one place where the mountains open up on 29. And I always said to myself, I want to live there. And that's why I'm back here. And I did 20 years in the military. Like a lot of you, it was in the middle of 9/11. I mean, I had served in Japan, I had served a lot of places, did my orthopedic residency in California, and I was in the orthopedic clinic at Bethesda Naval Hospital when somebody came in and said one of the planes hit the Twin Towers. And I had heard about, the Empire State Building when they first built it because of the way the lights were, that, there were a lot of accidents, and I thought, well, maybe that's an accident. Then another one hit, and then finally the Pentagon. And I think we all learned, and we were all told, if you see something, say something. Well, what I learned was not only that, but if you see something, do something. And that's like the most important. So when I finished with the military, I was 15 years at Georgetown. I taught orthopedic residents. I did a lot of research and a lot of problem solving. That's what orthopedics does. My initials are actually FXM. When you say it fast, it's fix 'em. It's also, FX is the abbreviation for fracture. So orthopedics is always going to be what I was going to do in medicine. When I finally retired, I came here and I got involved more than I've ever been in a community before. And everybody was so warm and welcoming. What I say is I fell in love with the land, but what I really fell in love with was the people here. And what they were telling me was that they felt completely disenfranchised. They felt that what was going on in 40 South Road is not what they wanted. And I was told that they were a vocal minority in being around this county, probably talking to over 1,500 people in person, most people don't like the direction of the county. So I decided to step up, and that's why I'm here. I have two goals. One is to represent the views of the people in the street, the people who aren't listened to. I'm not here to represent development and business. And the second thing is, I'm here to try to preserve the rural heritage and the beauty of this place. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you. All right, now we will start with the questions. I feel like the most important issues in the county right now are about water, but also about the continued development in various parts of the county. So my questions are going to focus on those issues. Todd, first, I guess. There are a number of Greene residents who are struggling financially. Can you tell us about a time in your life when you struggled financially and how that experience might impact the type of leader you are?
That's a good question. I'm not going to beat around the bush. I've been a very blessed man. My father was a Rhodes Scholar and a successful businessman when he settled in Greene County, and we bought our farm. I was raised in the public schools, but I was a child of solid means. I was. I'm not going to tell you any different today. But I have been around those people my entire life. I rode the bus with the Shiplets and the Morrises and the Powells and all the names that we know so well up and down Dyke Road. And I see them every day now in McGuigan. And I'll tell you, even in the last 2 or 3 months, the faces have gotten longer. People are coming in, you see less of the disposable income, less of the buying the kids the ice cream or the toy or the extra thing. You're really seeing a change right now. I think the national media maybe is a little slow to catch up to this. I'll be looking for that in very shortly, but I see folks hurting. I see folks I've known since I was a tall hurting. And so that is going to be one more challenge in the midst of all that we have right now on our plate for Greene County. You know, we're looking at costs of the water, whether it's the reservoir, whether it's the infrastructure in Stanardsville. You're looking at the rising cost. We just put in EMS. We just got that up to speed. That's now a new county department, essentially. You know, and we have a lot of costs in front of us. How we're going to balance that with the people that are struggling now and potentially going to be struggling more, that's going to be a difficult balancing act. We're going to have to do a lot we're going to have to try and get every grant we can, every federal dollar we can, every state dollar we can. That's something that we know in the school boards as well. And then look for creative ways to fund and spread it out over the long term and broaden the tax base, right? So that we don't have the same people just getting taxed farther apart.
Okay, Francis, can you answer the same question? I can repeat it if you would like.
So, you know, I grew up as the son of a military officer. There was 4 of us, and on a commander's salary, it didn't go too far. My siblings, the 2 lower ones, actually were sort of the princes. My dad became a captain, and all of a sudden it was really important. I didn't have enough to eat or not have a roof over my head, but I really wasn't given anything. In high school, my senior year, I finished with 3 jobs, one of which was hauling concrete, and one of which was a painting company. And the painting company, I was able to get 4 times the minimum wage, and I had 2 people working for me. I saved enough to go to UVA, but the first airline plane I was ever on was at age 18. And actually, I had enough money from that painting job to go to Europe and hitchhike around. There was a lot of kind of, ramen and hot pot meals at UVA. And then I took a military scholarship. I didn't have a car. I rode my bike until I was 24. And then finally we had out rotations, and I bought a used postal Jeep for $1,200. Right-hand drive, the whole thing. Kind of different for a medical student. And then, through my medical career, I experienced a lot more things. I did a refugee rotation in Thailand as a medical student. I've done a few others in Vietnam and in Thailand and the Seychelles. As a medical officer, I treated terrorists in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, and I've treated the President of the United States. So there's an entire breadth of experience, and I think when you look at leadership, some of the greatest leaders have empathy with their people. They've walked a mile in their shoes, and as a result, they can make decisions not from one viewpoint, but from most viewpoints. And I think that that's what I would bring to the table as the Board of Supervisors for the at-large position.
Okay. We'll move away from personal questions right now. I guess, Francis, you could go first on this one, right? Todd went first on the other. Okay. I still got Corey written down. Recently, more than half of the developments approved in Greene County were outside of the approved growth area. How important do you feel it is to honor the comprehensive plan for developments in Greene County? And under what circumstances will you ignore the long-range plan and vote for a controversial proposal before the Board of Supervisors?
The comprehensive plan is a roadmap for us. And when you look at it, it sounds good. The number one in our vision statement is that we will preserve farmland. And then when you look at our zoning, we claim that our conservation district will be passed on to future generations unspoiled. Unfortunately, we don't follow that. Again, 50% of our growth is outside the designated growth areas. When you look at from our comprehensive plan, when you look at farmland, we have the least amount of farmland. Supposedly we're a hybrid from Albemarle. Albemarle has more farmland than we do. Orange does. Madison does. And they're actually increasing the amount of land that they're farming. So I don't think we need to be going into the areas that growth were not intended. Putting residential subdivisions in farmland and the idea of micro-industrialization. I think we build up. And once all of those areas are filled, then we consider doing that. But I don't think that that should be our primary focus. If we have a map, let's actually use it and stop driving off the road. So that's my.
Okay, Todd?
I believe that the bulk of the map, the zoning map that we have, was established in 1979. It's 44 years ago, when we said a certain area around Stanardsville was going to be residential zoning. Certain areas of Ruckersville are going to be residential zoning. That's where we want our growth. We don't want it out 810, we don't want it up South River, we don't want it these other places. That's been the plan since I was 4 years old. So I cannot understand why, when someone comes and says, we're going to build homes in Stanardsville, we're trying to chase them away. 500 homes is a daunting number. I don't want to see 500 homes pop up in Stanardsville. I can acknowledge that we're looking at a 10 to 15 year plan. Still, I don't want to see that. But I know if we don't allow them to develop where we've said for 40 years, that's where we want it, then they're going to go down 18. They're going to go down Fredericksburg Road. You can take a 100-acre agriculture parcel in Greene County tomorrow and put at least 20 homes on it. That's our laws right now. So if I want to build homes, if I'm a developer, if I'm a real estate guy, if that's my orbit, and I can't go in Stanardsville or Ruckersville, I'm going to go out in the countryside. We have been cutting our nose off to spite our face with some decisions here recently. I too want to keep rural green. That's where I live, that's where I grew up. But I think we're going to have to talk to these people and try to negotiate the best deal that we can for our citizens in the growth areas that we have established for 40 years, so that we can take that supply and demand, take that pressure off of these real estate agents, developers, et cetera, to go out into the countryside and carve up 5 acres at a time, 2 acres at a time, whatever it might be for the zoning. We have to put the growth where we said we were going to put the growth. The growth is coming. we all, I mean, I look around here, I see a lot of long-time faces from Greene County. And we all remember when the Burger King showed up, right? First thing, right? And it doesn't stop. And we can sit there and hope and wish that it would stop, but it's not going to stop. And so the best thing we can do is instead of having that growth happen to us, we make it happen for us.
Okay, Francis, well, you shouldn't always get the first, so Todd, another question for you, I guess. There was a proposal last year or 18 months ago before the Board of Supervisors about creating so-called rural enterprise centers. The proposal specified that 10 acres of farmland in agricultural zoning could be used for tech parks and light industry. Specifications included evergreen screening, limiting the size of the building, etc. The purpose was to make agricultural land useful, considering that our farmers are aging, and to bring tax income and jobs to the county. This proposal was turned down at that time, but it's sure to come before the board again. So if you were to vote on such a proposal for rural enterprise centers today, how would you vote?
I have the honor of farming over 1,600 acres between Greene and Madison counties. That is my job. I understand how big of a parcel of land you have to make a farm viable. What we have seen over recent decades is Granddad's farm was 250, 300 acres, and then Granddad gave it to a couple kids, and it became 75 acres, and then it became, and these farms, these parcels are getting smaller. And every time they get smaller, they're less viable as a business opportunity, as a chance for someone to feed their family, make a living in agriculture. We got to find some ways to help those people out to keep those farms farming. I'm really encouraged that the Commissioner of Revenue has tackled land use this year. I got my first land use forms ever from Greene County. I have been getting them for years from Madison County. All those land use forms say is, are you farming? Tell us how much, and we'll check back next year. These are good things because they encourage agriculture. They encourage the person who might have 40 acres and they're not a farmer. They might not even live in the state. But what they're going to do is partner with another local farmer who needs land to take hay or land to run cattle. That farmer then has a parcel of the land. If he puts a couple of those together, puts a couple of those together, that's viable. Now you can have a sustainable business. So I think the land use has been great for the benefit of agriculture. I was pushing for that back at the beginning of the year. Thought it would be a campaign issue. Campaign is already on. Very, very glad to see that. As far as the enterprise zones, outside the box thinking, that's great. That's a great thing. One of the things that the Board of Supervisors passed this year was some verbiage in one of the zones, in the agricultural zoning, that would allow for meat processing, animal processing. So if farmers teamed up and wanted to have that local animal processing facility, they can now do that. That wasn't there before. That was actually something that I was kind of working on behind the scenes to see that happen, because it would be great to have a place here in Greene County where we could process our own meat and feed our own families, keep that local. So when enterprise, I'm open to it. I do think sometimes we get a little pie in the sky, if you will, with let's outline this, like we had something with something came through with the military and military industry type zoning. There's been some discussion of those kinds of things. I'm not sure Northrop Grumman's moving into Greene County. I'm not sure that some of these things, I think we ought to look a little bit more in terms of cultivating what we've got, taking what would be the next step for us, as opposed to, Louisa just got Amazon. Good for Louisa, but they're on an interstate. We're not. So we're going to have to take what is the next logical steps for us.
Francis, rural enterprise centers?
Yeah. No. Very simply, no. Just like we talked about, we're already losing agricultural land. We already have people coming in and doing commerce and doing real estate development. So we have to stick to our comprehensive plan. Now, there are businesses that support agriculture. So if you're a welder, if you sell feed, if you wind up creating a compost organization, I think those are appropriate because they support the agriculture. I'm not big on the land use. And the reason why is the following. One little tiny example. If you have less than 21 acres, you are disqualified from using forest as a land use. Now, who is that geared towards? That's not geared towards the people who have large farms. It's not geared towards the people who have conservation easements. That's geared towards the marginal people in this county, a lot of whom have been here for 200 or 300 years. And if they don't have that tax advantage, they may have to pull out, especially with property taxes going through the roof. So I'm not big on some of the aspects of the land use reevaluation. I think we need to stabilize our rural economy. And I've got about an 8-point plan, most of which is tax incentives to help farmers. The first one, if you have a real farm vehicle, not the Tractor Supply slap license plate, it's a farm vehicle, but one recognized by Virginia, it should be exempt from personal property tax. If you have a farm that doesn't make more than $150,000 a year, and your agricultural buildings are in agricultural production, they should be exempt from real estate tax. When you sell land ag to ag, it should be exempt from conveyance fees. We should have a rural PAC, and the rural PACs should have a tri-purpose. The first purpose is to try to represent the rural people and their voice. There was a rural advisory committee balloon that was put up, but when you read the white paper, it was really trying to put a nail in the rural community. It was basically saying, you can't make any money in agriculture, you can't make any woods, there's not enough conservation easements, so let's start putting micro-industrialization throughout the whole place. So basically hurting it even more. The other two roles of the rural PAC, in my opinion, would be to create, one idea that I had was a beef consortium. So if you're a big producer, things are good. If you're a small producer, you're always relegated to selling at retail, wholesale. But if we gathered all the small farmers together and created a consortium, you then have enough economies of scale and you have enough cows coming on board that you can produce the beef cuts that people want, and it's grass-fed beef, and it's very attractive for the place that we're at, halfway between Charlottesville and DC. You create your own butcher, you create your own refrigeration units, you have a retail presence on 29, then you go to the restaurants, and then the final thing is you go online. The third part of that rural PAC is to basically try to expedite ag-to-ag sales. Farmers can notify that organization that, hey, I'm gonna punch out for 2 years. My kids aren't into it. And what you would do is allow them to try to find another agricultural concern. And the advantage is to that seller, they'll save 6% real estate fees. So if you take those things trying to support our agriculture, rather than coming up with ideas how to demise it, I think we're a better county, in my opinion. So those are the ideas that I think we need to do for supporting Greene. You know, to me, I'm preserve Greene now, and I will always be preserve Greene.
Okay. Next question. This is a biggie about water. Francis, you want to go first? Yes. Or you talked out for a minute?
No.
Okay.
I just...
Let me ask the question. I know this is a main one for you. Water resources have become a contentious topic in the county. As more businesses and homes are built, there's more pressure on limited water resources. How much will the reservoir actually cost, and how will it be paid for?
Part of the reason I was saying is I posted on this today. So right now, all of you, regardless of whether you use public water or not, pay 7.5% of your property tax for a $22 million water debt we already have. We need water for the 3,000 homes that are coming down the pike at us. We only have 2,900 users, and I think you all realized about 2 weeks ago, the Rapidan was at 0.5%, and that was our only water supply. If we had another 3,000 homes dumped on that, we would have been without water. So we need to build the reservoir. Now the problem is the cost of this project. And I've been told by the county administrator, we have to redo the infrastructure here first. That's an estimate of about $35 million. The reservoir and water treatment plant has gone from 35, like 20 years ago, 10 years ago, it was 65. Now the estimate is $100 million. And a lot of people believe if you build out enough, we're going to need another waste treatment plant. But let's throw that out. We'll just do the 22 plus 35. That's 22 plus 35. You got 57, $157 million. Now we have water connection fees of $10,000 and $10,000. Sounds like a lot of money. Every year, the Virginia Wastewater and Sewer Group gets together and publishes all the fees across the Commonwealth. Our fees are not the highest. And we have the worst problem per capita than anybody with $157 million staring us down the face. The other thing that almost all the other municipalities do is levy an equity buy-in. And what that means is, you just arrived on the scene, we've got this infrastructure, you have to buy into it.
You mean new houses?
Well, it would be new houses, but the caveat is, if you're outside the service district, obviously that doesn't pertain to you. So you would, have a well or septic, it doesn't pertain. But everything that's built, and almost all these 3,000 homes are going to need that. So what I've proposed is, instead of 10 and 10, you basically make something like 14 and 14 for the connection fee. And then you make a capital buy-in for sewer and water, also about 15 and 15. Again, those are not the highest in the Commonwealth. But that together would create enough money to basically cover both the costs and also allow for maintenance. That proposal would bring in about $174 million. And I think it's appropriate to put that on developers because they're the ones that are breaking the straw, they're providing the straws to break the camel's back. And otherwise, you're going to pick it up. And that's going to be 5 times the amount of debt we have right now, and you're already paying 7.5% real estate tax. So it's a nightmare, in addition to the fact that you're already picking up, because we don't do impact fees, for fire, EMS, roads, administration, and the big ticket item schools. So to me, the water issue, we have to raise those fees in order to solve the problem and also not have the citizens who have been here having to shoulder all the burden as 3,000 times the average price of a house in Greene County today, which is about $390,000, $1.2 billion in revenue. And they're asking a county of $71 million, $71 million per the entire county budget for a year to pick up the tab. I won't allow that.
Okay, Todd, your comments on the reservoir.
If you'll forgive me, I'm going to bring up one. I came in here note-free, but I wanted to make sure I had one reference right. The state of Virginia has, there's something called the Draper-Aden report. That is an independent study of all of the different water and sewer municipalities across the state of Virginia, what they charge, and how they do their fees, whether it's connection fees, user fees. The combined average of water and state for a hookup of a new home, the combined average for water and sewer for a new home in the state of Virginia right now is just a shade under $10,000. That's our state average. The highest for connection and capital recovery for water is $25,000, for sewer it's $21,000, but those are different localities. Maybe you have a locality that has a whole lot of trouble with sewer and vice versa, right? So even at the highest in the state of Virginia, if you were to, just for theory, let's combine those two together, you're looking at $46,000, according to last year's report. Dr. McGuigan wants to take ours to $60,000 to hook up to our water and sewer. What is going to happen? I've already told you what's going to happen. People who want to build homes, instead of going to the areas on the comprehensive plan and in the zoning that we've said we'd like to have homes, they're going out on Dyke Road. They're going down Fredericksburg Road. That's where the homes are going to be built, because you could just drop a well and you don't have to pay that $60,000. That's the most likely scenario. But let's say that a developer says, okay, I'll just take that and pass that along to my customers. You want to ding me an extra $60,000? I'm going to take that and I'm going to pass it along to my customers and I'm going to sell these homes anyway. What happens then? Let's say that happened in Stanardsville with these 500 homes we're talking about. Let's say all of them are artificially inflated in their value by $60,000. So what should have been a $400,000 house is now sold on the market for $460,000 to pay these fees. When 500 homes come into Stanardsville with a $60,000 artificial inflation on their price tag, what do you think happens to the property value, the assessed property value of the existing Stanardsville homes? They go up. The assessor comes in every 2 years. We all know that very well. The assessor comes in and says, well, guess what, ma'am? Your home is now worth, and it's going to be a reflection of the whole neighborhood. So this is not a strategy to bring down property taxes. It's a strategy to raise them. The good news is that I also disagree with Dr. McGuigan's numbers on the cost of the reservoir. When I've spoken with the county within the last 2 weeks, I'm told that the number is not the 170 that he has said, but it is more around 100 million. Now, I know that's still a daunting number. I understand. But I also understand that if we pursue the rural USDA grants that are available to us, along with several other grant opportunities, and I think we all know we have a great grant writer in Greene County who's itching to build on this, we could potentially drop that price tag as much as 50%. If we did that, now you're looking at something that is more akin to paying for a new elementary school than a $170 million price tag. So I don't think it's that bad. And I also think we have a lot of time to do it. We have to get moving, but we do have a long time with debt, with the opportunities for taking on the debt over time, with the opportunities for the grants and the loans. We have an opportunity to pay it over a very long time.
Okay, two very different views. But let's move on. Let's see. Who should I ask this first?
That was a big name.
I think it's a Todd's.
Can I get, James, can you bring a couple waters up, please?
Francis, you are on opposite sides of the glamping issue with Francis. Todd, you hosted the developer at Maybell's so he could present his plans to your customers. And Francis, you worked with a group of people to get petitions signed to stop the development. And I think you collected over 800 signatures. So would you each discuss your views on whether the glamping resort is good or bad for the county? Todd first.
You me first? Okay. You'd think we would have that by now. All right. We don't get to pick and choose who comes into our county and offers to develop business. Whether it's our location, whether it's our proximity to Charlottesville, whether it's the mountains and the entrance to the Shenandoah National Park, whatever it is, the unique features of Greene County are going to draw in whoever they're going to draw in. Whoever thinks as a business person they can capitalize on that opportunity. Obviously, the last one that I mentioned is key to the sojourner grants, right? The entrance to the Shenandoah National Park. So I met with those guys, gosh, it's probably been more than 2 years ago now. They were looking to meet with some local business people who they thought they could develop a network with. I knew right away that what they were proposing was going to be good for us keeping our rural beauty, because it's good for them. They want to sell to their people time out in the country. Come out and enjoy the beauty of Greene County. And they have tents, they have things, fire pits, and all kinds of things to let you be part of the country instead of what most other businesses would bring, which is let's build something up and have something big that's more commercialized. So I was very attracted to that. Now, I understand the hesitation over the first site. I still thought it was worth doing. I understand the opposition. Much of the opposition there was commentary like, they need to build that along a 4-lane highway. Okay, so now they are going to build that on the 4-lane highway, right there on Route 33. And if we don't want it there, then we don't want it anywhere. And if we don't want it anywhere, then I have to ask, what businesses are we willing to tolerate from Greene? If not one that's going to preserve our rural beauty, then where is our bar set and how is anyone going to do it?
Francis?
I'm kind of a process guy. So what I looked at in the glamping was that you had a campsite that 800 people voted against. And there were promises made by the company, none of which we actually held them to. So they said, it'll create jobs. Well, when you look at it, 2/3 of those jobs are going to be service jobs. And I don't think that the other ones were really, I don't think the lawyers for that organization were going to come from Greene County. I don't think the executive chef was going to come from Greene County. I don't think the CPAs, all the really good paying jobs are coming. And the service jobs, even McDonald's doesn't fire you at the end of the season. But that's what they were talking about. So that's one aspect. Then we had a vote, 4-1. And because we had enough time to mobilize, the vision and the will of the people was heard. So what did they do? They learned by that. And they rammed it through the second site within 4 weeks. I mean, I ran into people in the street 3 months later who said, it's great that we won that. And I was like, no, they voted again. So the problem, ultimately, in my opinion, is a problem in the 14th Amendment. Equal treatment under the law. So what happened with this organization, they were allowed to take a piece of land that's residential and waive enough money at our board to get them to take residential and make it agriculture, because that's the only thing that would allow them to put that entity in our county. Now, I have a question for you. If you live in a residential area, can you go and say, I'm going to cut my grass twice a year? I'm going to bundle that up and sell it for hay. So what I would like you, the board, to do is make my land agriculture and get the tax advantage and have it in the use, land use. Of course, they would laugh you out of the room. They are about to do it again. The piece of land that they want to marry because they don't have enough land for the septic fields and the trees and everything they've said. They want to bring in another 80+ acre piece. That's half residential. And this time, they're not even asking for that residential piece to be redesignated. So they're going to join 2 pieces of property, half of one of which does not allow that project. So the only thing I'm saying is we should be treating our people as good as we treat people who live here, as good as people who are investment companies coming from outside our county when we go up before the Board of Supervisors.
Okay. I lost my place. I was so fascinated. Well, this was important to ask of Corey, but he is not here. Each of you, too, including Corey, own large amounts of land in Greene County. And 2 of you earn income from tourist lodging on your properties, and that would be Corey and Todd. Under what circumstances would you recuse yourself from voting on land use or tourist lodging issues that come before the Board of Supervisors? Todd?
So my Airbnb is in Madison County. And so I don't think I would need to recuse myself on any Airbnb matters in Greene County.
That's it?
Yeah, I guess so.
And Francis, you have no plans of?
This is going to be just as quick.
Good,
I don't have an Airbnb. I think the idea of recusal is great, but I mean, even if Todd did have, one Airbnb, I don't think you should necessarily recuse yourself. I think, if you have a bigger entity, that might be true, but I think you would start having everybody to recuse themselves from a lot of the decisions. So it still should be left up to discretion, like an ethical decision on your own, but I don't know if, an absolute rule that if you have a business entity that you shouldn't be able to rule on business. So.
Should the farmland and conservation areas of rural Greene be preserved as they
we just went over that pretty much in detail. Yeah, so all I will say is, again, I think we should be trying to stay within our comprehensive plan. We should build them up, not out. Once we've exhausted all the commercial and all the residential properties, I think then you go into those other areas. And we have to create incentives, because I agree with Todd to a certain extent, that what's going to happen is there might be pressure to go out and to develop into the agricultural zone and the conservation zone, but the truth is they're doing that anyway. What we have to do is create incentives to stop that, whether that's through tax breaks, on building within the comprehensive zone, and try to build up our businesses, which I think right now all we're thinking about is development, residential development, residential development, residential development. And I think that's wrong. So I think we need to try to incentivize people coming into our county, building where our comprehensive plan says, and we would use carrots and sticks to do that. Because, again, I am dedicated to trying to preserve this so that everybody's children and grandchildren have the same experience that a lot of you did growing up, and then a lot of us came to this county since then.
Okay, do you have anything to add?
Sure, yeah. I would just point out that, by right is by right. Rights are what they are. And I think any government level, federal, state, or local, you've got to be very careful. If you think you're going to kind of pull the rug out from under a landowner, a property owner, or their children or their grandchildren, they have an expectation that has been enshrined in our county zoning ordinances for decades of what their rights are. Now, I know they're not set in stone, and there are processes by which to review the comprehensive plan and discuss whether or not we want to make adjustments, and that's part of the normal purview of the board. But I don't see us straying so far from what our by right A1 zoning is now that we're going to eliminate the potential for farmland to turn into some kind of a divided residential homes. Is it going to be 5 acres? Or are we going to drop it down to 4? Or are we going to, you can always potentially nibble around the edges here. But when the farmers transfer that property down a generation, and that next generation down lives in Louisiana or Massachusetts, it's really going to be the same decision at hand for that landowner, and they have rights. The best thing that we can do is take that pressure off in terms of the property value. Take that pressure of the developers or the real estate guys that might be waiting in line to build out that 100-acre agriculture parcel. Instead, if we're helping them to develop the areas we said we want to develop, supply and demand should help to take that pressure off of some of that agricultural land. And that might not be the perfect world answer, but when you're respecting individual property rights, I think that's the path we should take.
All right. That's all my questions. I have a particular one for Corey, but he's not here. So we have questions from the colleagues. Got her hand up first.
I want to first thank you because you guys have been very articulate and really smart and this is just wonderful to be able to hear it all so clear and we don't always get that. So probably within the past week, I've become super concerned about data centers. Up until recently, I thought the growth was concentrated in Northern Virginia, where prices for land to build data centers go as high as $4 million an acre in Loudoun County. But I was like, okay, well, I'm down here. Well, after doing a little research, I see the reason Louisa County got Amazon is because they're close to the highway, but they're gonna have it. Culpeper has them on the books, and other rural counties like King George and Caroline, which just never even occurred to me. So I can see the revenue piece, and I can also see the challenges. And what I'd really love to hear from you is, what are your thoughts about it so far? We're a small rural county. Are there some advantages? Because clearly we have some financial challenges facing us. Or are the challenges on the other side, because I see them as kind of enormous, and my big concern is that the small rural counties don't have a specialized staff that can research and know, and that these big corporations like Amazon can come in and just like tell you everything you want to hear and then walk away just giggling. So, but whoever, whose turn was it?
I don't like the idea, from what I've read, I don't like the idea of data centers. I think Todd's point is, sometimes you can't impose as a county on them what you can build and what you can't build. Having said that, and it's the issue similar to the development, so these things use massive amounts of electricity. They are a huge eyesore. The promise of economic development is usually kind of bad. Microsoft did one in another Virginia city, Boynton or something, and they were promised jobs. Well, they got 30 jobs. And overwhelmingly, they were administrative assistants and janitorial. That they brought in their own tech people to run this thing. So it really didn't help the economy. And the other thing that is, they use massive amounts of water, which we don't have. So I do think, even though there are these, discussions about what you can do by right and what's allowed, I think until we solve our water problem, we should be able to say, no, we cannot hook you up. And there is precedent for that. In Virginia law, I've heard a lot of talking points that you can't deny water. You'll be sued by the developer, it'll go to the Virginia Supreme Court, and you'll win. The developer will. Well, unfortunately, Fauquier County has section 19-18, never been sued, hasn't gone to the Virginia Supreme Court. It specifically states, if we do not have water, we don't have to hook you up. And right now, we don't have that capacity. The builders are allowed, and just like Todd says, 500 homes on Sims, if you hook them up, they can get that in theory by right. But if you don't hook them up, it's 77, which is kind of what, I think that's appropriate. And I don't think greed should be driving any and every decision we have. I think we should try to have developers say, you're putting this on our community, and you should try to work with our community. 77 homes in a town with 215 homes, that's okay. 500? Increasing it 2.5 times? I mean, that becomes the definition of our county seat, and I just think that's wrong. So I ballooned it a little bit beyond the data center. The key thing is the water issue on the data center.
There are other rivers in Greene County besides the Rapidan. But I had wanted to ask Corey about this because he is in the data center industry, and he would probably know how to answer this question.
Yeah, he probably would have been the most educated, at least among the panel on this. Admittedly, I haven't studied that in depth, but I have seen stories, about some of the specific ones that you have referenced. It doesn't sound like a good deal. I don't see a lot of daylight between what Francis said and what I would say about that. I always offer the caveat, if there's a reason that property right allows somebody to do something, I respect their right. But, we have some of these things like that. That's a great example.
I don't think that's by right.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
And the amount of land they use.
Is it something in a manufacturing
No, I
zoning or
think
something?
if our description of light industrial allows it in places, that's how they've gotten into a lot of the other places. Because it sounds like it's light industrial, but then when you talk about the power and the water, it isn't. But I just feel like I just wanted it on your radar because one of you is going to have a vote on it. And they will come knocking. I feel certain they will. And I just feel like we need to know maybe there is something like teeny tiny small that would be beneficial, but not like the farms. But it is very concerning. Loudoun County just changed their by right to say it can't be close to it can't be the light industrial because that's too close to residential. They're for future, but they had to grandfather everybody else. And the noise pollution, because the hum is just really damaging.
I mean, that may be the workaround, is you fashion your ordinances basically to create ordinances that won't allow that to come into your community. If you do it before they knock on the door, I think that you're good to go. I think if you try to do it after they've already bought the land, then I think you've got a problem.
Right, so that's,
All right. Any other questions?
yeah,
Ken?
In the Sunday's debate, and discussion during that, you implied that it was anti-American for the board basically to consider the broader Greene County community in voting against the Blue Ridge development. And that supporting such a position was also anti-American. You also made specious claims about communist agendas in the community. It's every citizen's right to voice their opinion on matters before the Board of Supervisors. In light of your stated biases, how will you assure voters that you will objectively consider matters that come before the Board of Supervisors, and that you will take into consideration all concerns from all citizens of the county if you're elected?
Thanks for the question. You haven't had the quote, the anti-American quote?
Certainly. This was discussing the Blue Ridge development. You said your government wanted to shape the way the buyers of your property.
Yes.
My opponent cheered on such anti-American behavior with a passion.
Yes. If you're a property owner in Greene County and you have a deal on the table to sell your property to someone who wants by right use, doesn't matter who it is, really, but the developer has said we're going to do it anyway. So let's say that that's the only avenue that you do it. You are a landowner and you have a legitimate legal buyer ready to purchase your property. Far be it from the county to use their power to chase off your buyer. I do think that is unfair. I stand by it. We are a nation founded on property rights. We are a nation founded on private property ownership. And anything that we do where we say to someone else, you can't do that over there, you can't use your property, execute your rights that way, you better be prepared for that to come back on us when it's our turn, when it's our children's turn. It's just, it's in my DNA. I was raised to be a property rights guy.
Francis, do you have a comment on?
I mean, just kind of briefly, it wasn't a by right discussion. It was a discussion to allow planned unit development in lieu of something that could be considered by right. And as a result, I think the community has the right to express an opinion, and I think we need to do that with respect. I think we can disagree, but ultimately we're neighbors, and a lot of us are family, and you really want to try to separate, it's kind of like that old adage, hate the sin, not the sinner. And I think as a society, not just here, but nationwide, we need to be thinking about that when we have discussions.
Okay, any other more questions? AJ?
This question is for Todd. During your campaign and tonight, you posted or spoken about your family history. Apparently you were not born here, but you did
Moved here when I was 4.
You did, I'm sorry?
When I was 4 years old, we moved here.
All right, but you did attend Greene schools.
Yes.
As you mentioned tonight, your father was a Rhodes Scholar, and apparently he worked in the White House on clean air and water issues, and he bought some country property here in Greene. Apparently you inherited, did you mention 1,600 acres?
Well, it's in a family trust.
Yes.
You
You inherited a sizable chunk of land, which is great.
Well, in Greene County, my Greene County ownership is about 300 acres.
Okay.
Yes.
Apparently your mother is a philanthropist, and these facts, all of, when you combine them together, essentially set you apart from most Greene County residents. On September 19th, you posted on Facebook that as a comparison with your opponent, you are the only one who's one of us. And I've seen this on your Facebook too. You can trust me, I'm one of you.
Yes.
You know, aside from spending more years in Greene County than Mr. McGuigan, could you please explain why you call yourself one of us and what that means and why that matters?
Yes, sir. The short answer to that is since 2015, when I moved back to the area, I have served my community in every capacity that I can find. I've served in public service. I have built a business that was specifically designed to serve my community. The smart thing to do with the money that we put into Maybells would have been to buy into the stock market, buy some Apple, right? That would have been the smart thing to trust me. If you look at the numbers, that would have been far and away the smarter thing to do. But I decided that I wanted to invest in my community. I decided that I wanted to do something for my friends and neighbors who rode the school bus with me 40 years ago. There is an innate resentment. It's human nature. I'm not talking about Greene County, I'm just talking about its human nature. There's an innate inkling to resent wealth or someone succeeding. We all have to try to rise above that. I'm seeing some of that on Facebook and some of the things that I'm seeing from folks. It's unfortunate, but all I can tell you is that I have tried to give to my community. I have tried to build something. I have tried to revitalize, be a part of revitalizing Main Street, Stanardsville. Maybell's on Main. We went in there last year and we planted the flag. And we said, we're here to stay, and we're here to see Stanardsville through, and we hope others will join us. These kinds of things have been twisted to appear that there's some kind of a rich guy doing rich guy things. I mean, again, all I can tell you is that's not the path that he would take if he were specifically looking at investment and return. I'm investing in my community, and I'll continue to do that. That's why I think I'm one of us.
Okay, we have time for a few more questions.
I have a question.
Oh, you got a question last time.
Mine's a good question. And mine's a question that has to do with people that they haven't really talked about. And that is, we have, our schools we have a lot of people who have to have free-reduced lunch, although that has changed in terms of the service of it. But we have a lot of people who are struggling. We have at-risk citizens who have to have homes. And talking to folks around here and finding out that a person is paying $1,500 a month for a one-bedroom apartment, I don't know how they can afford that and how they can live on a disability income doing that. How would you address that? Would you address that through proffers of all those buildings and say a percentage have to be built for low-income folks, providing some kind of employment in the area where people without cars and transportation can get to them? What ideas do you have as a board of supervisor to assist this population that we have that we've not been talking about? We're talking about people who can afford $390,000 homes.
Is that question addressed to both of them?
Yeah.
Okay. Quickly.
Okay, so I have kind of treated people who lived under the 14th Street Bridge and the people who occupied 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. So I'm up close and personal, I've seen it. And if you were at the Blue Ridge Meadow PUD meeting, one of the very first speakers was somebody who was being thrown out of the trailer park. And she said she was promised 6 months to leave. And it literally, she got a note saying you gotta leave immediately. So I don't know all of the dealings, quite frankly, to the letter about what we can and cannot do. But I think some provision for low-income housing should be incorporated into some of these. When we're building 3,000 homes that are going to be $400,000, I think we can
townhouses, townhomes, structures that have multiple residences within them for purchase. Those are going to be a little bit less expensive than your standard standalone home. Now, I know that maybe the specific population that you're talking about still couldn't make that jump. But it's about supply and demand. We don't have enough, we, America, don't have enough rooftops, we, Greene County, don't have enough rooftops to solve that problem. And it all goes back to, are we gonna let them build anywhere? The answer is yes, because we need low-income homes, middle-income homes, we need blue-collar homes, we need all kinds of homes right now. There's an inventory shortage. It's massive, and it really is propping up the economy right now because it's falsely inflating home prices. But that's another story. We have to have rooftops.
Okay. We have time for one more question. Chuck?
This question for both of you, a little bit different, but it is for both of you. Todd.
Yes.
This is an email that I got this morning from Commonwealth Attorney Win Consalvo after I had emailed him yesterday asking if there was any validity to the thing that I'm going to about read to you right now. And I got the packet in the mail yesterday that I'm going to speak about. The registrar and Wynn got the packet late August, early September. In early September, this is from Wynn. In early September, I received an anonymous package regarding the statement of economic interest filed by Mr. Sansom in his capacity as a candidate for and elected member of the Greene County School Board. The package alleged that there were false statements in the SOEI, which, if true, could constitute a criminal offense. Under Virginia law, investigations of alleged criminal acts by an elected official may only be authorized by the governor, the Virginia Attorney General, or a grand jury. That's Virginia Code 52-8.2. Pursuant to this law, I provided the material received to the Virginia State Police for referral to the Attorney General's office. The Greene County Commonwealth Attorney's Office has not had any other involvement in this matter. The Greene County Sheriff's Office has had no involvement in this matter. So my question to you is, what this says, do you know anything about it? Is it true? To Dr. McGuigan, I know I screwed that up, but anyway, my question to you is, it was an anonymous packet. Are you behind this, or is one of your supporters, if you know, behind this?
Obviously, that is the first that I've heard of that. Also obvious is it sounds like it could potentially be a legal matter, and I shouldn't comment on it further.
I think anybody who's watched the campaign, I haven't tried to do any slurs, I haven't called anybody names, I haven't done any of that, and this is beyond the pale, so no, I don't know anything about this package, and I guess you leave it up to the authorities.
Okay, well, this is a bit of a bombshell. Let's leave that up to